AJ used complain, and he certainly hopes that it's effective. So, this is going to be a relatively quick video. I'm just going to be reiterating some stuff that's already online. You guys can look it up if you want greater detail into it, because there are people out there who are much better at covering Pokemon news than I am. I'll try to remember to link a couple of them in the description, people who, if you are a Pokemon fan, you should be following in the first place. So I'm going to be reiterating that stuff a little bit, and then giving my personal take on the situation, assuming that you will do your due diligence after this video has finished running, and go and look into this more yourself, if it is of interest to you at all. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, though, there is a controversy circulating right now regarding the latest Pokemon games. At the Pokemon Direct recently, the Nintendo Direct, the Pokemon section of it, Game Freak revealed that the new Pokemon games, Pokemon Sword and Shield, would not include backwards compatibility with every single Pokemon in the franchise. And sure, Pokemon games don't tend to make every single Pokemon catchable anyway. You'll typically only have the new Pokemon as well as a select few which fit the themes of the new region presented in the game available to catch in the world at all, until maybe in the post-game stuff where more will become available. But up to this point, you were always able to take Pokemon from past games and transfer them up. Games always had the ability to accept every single Pokemon into the new game if you transfer them up from an old one. And there's even a new transfer system. I'm trying to remember what it's called. It doesn't matter what it's called, though. Pokemon Home, I think, maybe. There's even a new transfer system that's supposed to let you store your Pokemon so that you can transfer them up to new games when those games come out if you want to. And when Pokemon Sword and Shield were announced, the assumption was that that would be true for Pokemon Sword and Shield as well, because why wouldn't it be? And yes, Game Freak has given some reasons why it's not possible for Pokemon Sword and Shield, but we'll get into why they're bullshit in a second. The fact of the matter is that's not going to be the case this time. We're going to get the new Pokemon as well as, and we don't even know what this means yet, some Pokemon which fit the theme of the region, but not all Pokemon. And the goal here is that this and subsequent future Pokemon main series game releases will sort of rotate which old school Pokemon they allow you to transfer up, so that all of them will be represented at some point in the relatively near future. But they also contradict that by saying that they're going to focus on Pokemon that are most popular, and there are certainly Pokemon who are not popular. The Drill Butt Pokemon, and the Garbage Bag Pokemon, and the Ring of Keys Pokemon all spring to mind pretty immediately when I say unpopular Pokemon, though Dunsparce does have its proponents more so than the other two do. And the simple fact of the matter is, while certain Pokemon are definitely less popular than others, every Pokemon is somebody's favorite. I happen to really love Garbodor. I think he's hilarious. He has a decent move pool. I have fond memories of a fantastic version of him in the trading card game, which won games, man. It just kicked ass. Like, yeah, I like him in a meanie sort of way, but I still like him. He's still a fun Pokemon to me. And I guarantee he's not going to make it into the new games, because he's a pile of trash, literally. And it's because this controversy revolves around the lack of inclusion of all these past Pokemon. It also has to do with them not including the national Pokédex. Each game has a regional Pokédex, an inventory of all the Pokemon in the game that you can fill out by catching them, as well as a national Pokédex for all the extended Pokemon from past games. This game's not going to have a national Pokédex. I mean, Sun and Moon didn't either, if I recall correctly. But you could still transfer other Pokemon from past games up, and you could transfer all of them up if you had access to them. Because the point of the game has always been to complete the Pokédex. Not the regional Pokédex, but the national Pokédex in each new game, and the ability to transfer your past Pokemon up was the way that you did that without sacrificing all the time that you spent in past games collecting all of the Pokemon in past games. And there's still a certain amount of fun to be had completing the regional Pokédex, don't get me wrong. And I'm not a completionist type anyway, that's not a thing that I do. This outrage isn't on my behalf, but I am still outraged, because there's absolutely no reason that they couldn't have included every single Pokemon in this game, made them available, at least for transfer up from past games, in this game. They mentioned something sort of offhandedly about balancing, but Pokemon's never been balanced. Pokemon only has a meta because third-party groups establish metas for the competitive scene. Pokemon as a game has never been balanced competitively, and it's never going to be. It can't possibly be with as many Pokemon as are in it, even just with as many Pokemon as are in it in each generation's regional Pokédex, let alone the something like 1,000 Pokemon that we're working up to at this point. So the idea that Game Freak thinks that they need to, or should, or even could balance the games for competitive play is ludicrous, and they know better. They have accepted for decades that that's not their responsibility, that others have taken responsibility for balancing the game competitively. So that in and of itself is a load of bullshit. But then they had the audacity to say that it's because it's too much work to program all the Pokemon into the games. And yes, it seems like maybe that would be the case, because there's a hell of a lot of Pokemon now, and every single one of them would need an HD 3D model in the game in order for that Pokemon to compete in battles. But again, this is bullshit, because there are already 3D models of every single Pokemon in existence. They're in Pokemon Go, but more importantly, they're in Pokemon Sun and Moon. Every single Pokemon up through the Sun and Moon regional Pokédex, the newest generation of Pokemon at that time, has a 3D model in the game. And yes, they're not HD models. The 3DS cartridge can't sustain that many HD models and textures. Sure, but every single one of them was made in HD. They exist in HD. We know this. We were told this at the time, back when Sun and Moon were still being hyped up for release. Every single 3D model in that game was rendered in HD and then compressed to fit on the 3DS cartridge. So we know they have them up to the latest generation, which will be new to Sun and Moon. And I certainly hope they're designing the Pokemon Sword and Shield characters, models in HD already to make the game. So what's the problem? Why can't they just use the HD models of past Pokemon which already all exist, and then supplement them with the HD models of the new Pokemon that we already know that they're making? There have been a couple of arguments for why they can't do this. The new Dynamaxing feature, which turns Pokemon giant and enhances their moves all at once, is said to work for every single Pokemon in the game, so that's been used as an argument as to why they don't have time to implement every single Pokemon from past generations, because they have to create separate models for the Dynamax versions of every Pokemon in the game as well. But why do they have to do that? Why can't they just blow up the model and then hide any muddiness in the textures with the crazy effects that are applied to the character when they're Dynamaxed? We've already seen them. We know that there's like red lighting effects and red shaders and shit stacked on top of them. I think that would serve to hide any imperfections in the models, right? I assumed that's why it was there. I assumed that the Dynamaxed models were just blown up models of the actual Pokemon, like their actual normal size cells. But apparently they're not. Apparently they're creating separate Dynamaxed Pokemon models for every Pokemon in the game, and that's just such a waste of time and resources. But it's a thing that has precedent in past games. Apparently this is a thing that Game Freak does all the frickin' time, and it's honestly stupid. There's also a rumor that there's going to be an armor system in these games, that you're going to be able to attach armor to, if not every Pokemon in the game, then select Pokemon in the game. But even then, it's pretty easy to program something like an armor to just attach itself to a model that already exists using designated points of attachment. And yet, the rumor is that they're creating separate models for every single Pokemon that can be armored. Ones without armor and ones with armor as well. And if that's the case, that's almost as ludicrous as the Dynamaxing thing. My point is, if the issue really is that they just don't have time to implement every single Pokemon from past generations in these new games, it's their fault for the way they're designing the game. It's not an actual limitation of the game itself. It's also been said that they could implement all of the Pokemon, but they're trying to cut down production times of the games so they can get more main series games out faster and broaden the experience. And that's the thing that has me the most worried, because looking at the trailer for the game, while there's definitely cool stuff in it, there's a lot left to be desired as well. The textures are far lower quality than I would have expected for the first ever Pokemon console release and the first ever HD Pokemon game. The character models still look pretty basic. They barely have any expressiveness to them. The Pokemon in battle don't have any custom animations for their moves. There are still all of these corner-cutting measures implemented into the game, so you would have expected development to go elsewhere apart from those things, to, say, implementing every Pokemon into the new games as fans have come to expect. Keeping in mind that this is a huge allure of the franchise. The fact that you can recollect every single Pokemon in each new generation is a major allure of this franchise for many fans. Most fans, in fact. A vast majority, I would even say. And yet, we now know for a fact that that's not where development time and resources have gone. So where did they go? Is this game just barely finished because the production time was cut down so much? Because Game Freak is also focusing on another new RPG that I think kind of looks like garbage? Some of the best games in the entire franchise are the remakes of Gold version, Silver version, Ruby version, and Sapphire, called Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Omega Ruby, and Alpha Sapphire. And I believe that they are some of the best games in the franchise simply because they took existing concepts, existing relatively well-defined concepts within the franchise, and then expanded upon them, added to them, built more lore into them, enhanced them, which to me says that longer development periods are really what this franchise needs to shine. This new game, these new games, Sword and Shield, are supposed to be the definitive entries in this franchise. The first console releases, the first HD Pokemon games, the first Pokemon games with open world elements. They are supposed to be as definitive an entry into this franchise as the original Red, Blue, and Green versions were. And it looks like they're going to be barely a step up from Sun and Moon, which, despite, I think, having a really compelling dynamic between its two main characters, the player character and their companion Lily, were kind of disappointing in a lot of ways. And so I do expect, unfortunately, that these games are going to be kind of disappointing in a lot of ways. Like, there's a big open world section with free roaming Pokemon running around that you can encounter or avoid at your leisure, and they can't even be bothered to animate the wings on all of the flying types that you can encounter in the overworld. Some of them are just floating around like frickin' UFOs or something. The more open encounter areas and the free roaming Pokemon within them are supposed to be a defining characteristic of this generation, and they can't even go all in on that. I'm so mad at these games. I'm so mad at Game Freak's attitude towards the fans criticizing them. They're so flippant and dismissive about it. They've given multiple statements on the matter at this point, and they just don't seem to care. And then there's the release of the trailer for Pokemon Masters, which is going to be a main series styled Pokemon game on mobile, which is going to be, if I'm not mistaken, free to play, but with in-game transactions. And it honestly looks like it could be pretty fun. The trailer I thought was kind of trash, and it could certainly look better, but I wouldn't be opposed to main series style games available on mobile which don't have quite the depth of experience as the actual main series games, but give me some impression of that same experience. I think that could be kind of cool. as long as the main series games are still carrying the franchise. And it seems like they expect the mobile side of Pokemon to carry the franchise going forward, because let's face it, Pokemon Go is already as profitable as the entire rest of the Pokemon franchise combined. And sure, that is an important statistic to keep in mind, because Game Freak is a company. The Pokemon Company is a company, but the statistic that I feel they should care more about is the percentage of fans which don't plan to buy Sword and Shield or play Pokemon Masters because they're disappointed in how Game Freak is treating them, and I'm adding myself to that growing list. And I think all of you should as well. I am boycotting Pokemon Sword and Shield. I think that you should too if you're a Pokemon fan. And I want you to understand how painful it is for me to say that. Anyone who follows my Tumblr should realize how upset I am that I'm not going to get a chance to journey through this new world with the Corgi Pokemon that was announced at the Direct, along with the game's first trailer. But that is by far the most superficial reason why it hurts me so much to say these things. Like, you have to understand, I've been a Pokemon fan for as long as it has been possible for a non-Japanese person to be a Pokemon fan. I played the earliest games. I collected the trading cards. I have the first releases of every single Pokemon in card form out of the first two generations of Pokemon, I think, barring like 5 or 6 characters, in binders on my shelf behind this camera. They're right over there. This franchise has been a major part of my life since I was a child, and the Pokemon world is still to this day the fictional world that I would probably most like to live in if I had a choice. And the idea that for the first time since I picked up my copy of Pokemon Yellow version, that I'm not going to be playing through a main series Pokemon game, that hurts me. That wounds me. It makes me feel pain. And maybe that's stupid. Maybe that's a sign that I'm too obsessed with this franchise, or that I put too much stock in it. But I don't care. That's still true. And it's not like I'm complaining about this for my own sake alone. It's not as if the franchise took a turn that I personally don't like. This is something that fans in general don't want, and they are so insistent upon giving it to us anyway. As a concept, Pokemon Sword and Shield seem like fine games. The region itself seems developed well enough. There's new and interesting things. Even Dynamaxing, even if it is kind of just a lazy blend of Mega Evolutions and Z-Power moves, is still perfectly fine and a perfectly serviceable mechanic. So, like, the broad strokes are there for this to be a good, strong, successful generation of Pokemon. It's all the finer details, some of which aren't there at all, that are a problem. And at this point, the only thing that Game Freak would need to do to fix it is say, you know what? We heard you. We're going to stop dismissing the concerns of our entire user base. We're going to commit to shoring some of this stuff up, maybe extend the production time on the game a little bit, push back the release date, shore some of this stuff up, and we'll do our best to bring all of the past Pokemon, availability of all the past Pokemon to the game later in free DLC. That's all they'd have to say. But they're never going to do that. It really does seem at this point that Game Freak's primary concern is to make as much profit as possible with as little effort as possible. And, of course, all the things that I just mentioned would be effort, would take effort that they don't want to give anymore. At this point, even if Game Freak did come out and apologize, not even apologize, just reassure us that they will eventually give us what we're asking for. While that might be enough in the short term, I don't think it's going to be enough overall. I think that eventually this mentality will start to permeate the production of these games again down the line, and maybe even make things worse than they are now for Game Freak. At this point, I think the best thing that could probably happen to Pokemon is some other company buying it up which seems laughably impossible. I don't know, I don't want to say that Pokemon's dead, because I don't think it's possible for Pokemon to die, and even if it were to die, pop culture would prop up its corpse for the next 50 years. But I feel that this is the closest that it's ever come to being dead, and this is the first time that I kind of wish it had died off before it reached this point. I hate that I'm saying this. I hate that I feel like I have to say this. I hate that I feel like I have to ask you guys not to participate in the 8th generation of this franchise, and yet here I am. But as per usual, I'd like to know what you guys think of any of the stuff that I talked about in this video. What are your thoughts on the new games, on this controversy? Had you even heard about this controversy before I mentioned it? Do you plan to buy the new games? What did you think of Pokemon Masters? I may have very strong opinions on this, but that doesn't mean I'm going to decry you from sharing your very strong opinions on this if they differ from mine, or that I'm going to think less of you for holding those opinions. Let's just talk about Pokemon a little bit. I guess that's what I'm asking. Let's talk about Pokemon a little bit in the comment section down below. Either way, though, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later. Our hearts so true, our courage